This is where we want to take this conversation into a new place. In the last gathering in Long Beach, someone sat in the chair and asked the question, Abraham, you say that there's no assertion, and yet you talk about how we think thoughts, or we project thoughts. He said, I'm wondering, if we can project a thought, then why is there no assertion? And we said, because just because you're thinking it doesn't mean somebody else has to receive it and live it, because it's all law of attraction based. So think about a projection of thought, a thought that you think, a broadcast. Think about a radio tower broadcasting a signal. Well, it can broadcast all day, every day. And if no one has a tuner that's tuned to it, and no one's turned that tuner on, then that broadcast is not going to be received, and there's not going to be any manifestation as a result of it. It's like if a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, did it make a sound? No, because there was no one there to translate the vibration into a sound. So in order for creation to happen, there has to be a broadcasting and a receiving, a broadcasting and a receiving, a broadcasting and a receiving. So the way you set your receiver, the way you set your tuner, is by what you broadcast. It's by what you think. So when you think about a world that is wonderful, you set your tuner to receive evidence of that wonderful world. When you think about a world that is having all kinds of catastrophes and problems, then you set your tuner to be experiencing or aware of those kinds of things. Right. And so it's so wonderful that you are each a part of this magnificent balance of broadcasters and receivers, that there is enough diversity in what you desire and in what you allow, that everyone has the potential of living happily ever after. And in fact, you are better off for every diverse opinion that exists, because through the diversity you sift and sort and find what you are projecting, and as you project it, meaning as you think about it, as you speak about it, as you talk about it, you practice a vibrational countenance that equals your point of attraction, and then life is reflected back to you in perfection to the broadcast that you are sending. So let's just rest in that deliciousness for a minute. That was so good. Jerry wanted to write a book called Turning Thoughts to Things, because he had a sense of this. Long before he met us, he was wanting to talk about how thoughts turn to things. Why do some people have this outcome of life and other people have this outcome of life? And as he began watching people and sort of making an association between what they were living and how they were sounding, he began to notice an absolute correlation between people who were feeling good about life and how their lives were turning out, and people who were complaining all the time and how their lives were turning out. He saw people who were in good positions because they'd been born into good positions, who ended up in terrible positions because they couldn't stop talking about the resentment they had, that their parents didn't give them more of the pie. And so he became aware that there is something to the way these thoughts are turning to things. Yes. And so we want to say today that as you are caring about the way you feel, so you have managed to wake up feeling good and then not do anything to counter that, or sit in meditation and quiet your mind, which stops resistance so that your vibration raises, or take a walk on the beach, or put your feet in the sand, whatever it takes for you to find yourself in that tuned in, tapped in, turned on state of being. Once you are in that receiving mode, while you are in that receiving mode, you are the realizer of all kinds of thoughts that are turning to all kinds of wonderful things, all the way along the way to the magnificent culmination that you're reaching for on different subjects. So Esther's been watching because she's been listening to us for a long time, really long time. She's been hearing us say this statement right from the beginning of her translation for us. There are two ways to know what is in the works in terms of what you're creating. Two ways to know. One is how you feel, the other is how it's turning out. How you feel is pre-manifestation, how it turned out is post-manifestation. Pretty obvious, isn't it? So you can tell what your vibrational state of being is by how you feel and how it turns out. Well, if you care about how you feel, and you receive an idea about something, call them, go see them, go here, do this. When you get an impulse from the receiving mode, pay attention. As it plays out, it's wonderful. But if you're all balled up in something, if you're angry, if you're frustrated, if you're mad at somebody, if you feel like you've been mistreated, and then you follow the impulses that come from that vibration, watch how it turns out. It always, 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 always matches. Good feeling thoughts that you hold consistently always turn in to wonderful experiences in life. Not good feeling thoughts always turn in to more of the same. Now, any step along the way, you can have a bad feeling thought, and certainly it's natural to have a reaction to something not wanted. It's natural to feel defensive. If somebody comes at you suddenly, it's natural for you to defend yourself and not let them just slug you right in the face. That's natural. The way to start positive momentum really is to be as general as you can. Because when you get specific, what happens is you activate the momentum that you've already had going. Does that make sense? So the more general you are. So what's the most general thing that you could think when you wake in the morning? Something that's good feeling. Could you focus upon your body lying in the bed? Could you appreciate the fact that you breathed all night long and you didn't have to think about it? That your bodily functions are working, that your heart is pumping and that the air is flowing? Could you just for a moment acknowledge in appreciation, but really more generally, the physical well-being of that? No matter what's going on in your body, those things that are happening, it's big. It's really, really big. That's really big. It's really worth appreciating for a little bit. The roof over your head, the air conditioner when you're in a hot city, the structure that provides the electricity that makes it possible for this easily accessible and very low cost energy. Isn't that something worth focusing on? And isn't it positive, and doesn't it feel good? And isn't there some appreciation in that? And if you've stayed there for as little as 17 seconds, which we just did, isn't there something else that you could leapfrog into? Something else that feels equally good? Aren't you appreciating the commerce of your world? Aren't you appreciating the fact that the world is so large and there is so much energy and how dynamic it is? Don't you love the economy of your world? Don't you love the standard of living that you have access to? Isn't it nice? Don't you appreciate the way you get around? Have you looked at the vehicles that you drive? You look at the vehicles and you see how solid they are, how well constructed they are, how reasonable they are, how accessible they are. Don't you feel fortunate to live in an environment where everyone you know has transportation? Not just transportation, but for the most part really reliable transportation. Aren't you pleased with the organization that your government has provided that puts these roadways in place? Aren't you amazed that you can get anywhere that you want to be? Not just in your conveyances that are on the ground, but those that are in the air. Isn't this a wonderful time to be alive? Don't you love being at the peak of technology? Aren't you enjoying the computer that you have today? Do you remember the one that you had 20 years ago? Do you remember how many megabytes of memory you had in comparison with what you've got going on now? Don't you appreciate the ease of all of that? Now, did any of you feel any argument with any of that? Was it boring? In some cases, it was boring, but there was no resistance in the conversation. So now the momentum can continue. So you find yourself appreciating things like that generally. You find yourself appreciating things like that globally. You find yourself acknowledging the well-being of how most are thriving around you. You could even find yourself comparing yourself to those who live in other places and feeling appreciation for where you have landed and what you are accomplishing. then you can move into your appreciation for trading stocks and the facilities for it that make it possible, and the intuitiveness that you find, and how fun it is to use the power of your mind, and how great it is to get to do the math, and how nice it is that there is a mathematical science that you understand. The reason that that momentum keeps going well for you is because that is the vibrational momentum that you've got going. But you can get that momentum going on every subject in the world. Anything that matters to you, you have the ability to allow, not get that momentum going, to allow the momentum that you already got going to sweep you into its momentum. Here's the thing. You see, source is flowing to all of you, to all of them. There is a river, a stream, a powerful flow of clarity and abundance and well-being going to all of them. The question is, why aren't they letting it in? How is it that they've come to practice thoughts that hold them in a vibrational frequency? And you kind of ought to know that you're practicing thoughts that hold you in that frequency, because these thoughts that are holding you apart from the frequency of alignment feel so awful when you think them, you see. And so the best that you can do for anyone is to thrive in every way you can. And in your thriving, in your holding yourself in alignment, because thriving and alignment are the same thing, as you hold anyone as your object of attention. And this goes to the heart of your question. What can I do? What can I do? You said. When you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and you're holding someone as your object of attention, you are flooding pure positive energy all over them. Whether they can receive it or not is not something that you have very much control over. And they're going to look at you and they're going to say, but you're happy and I'm not. I need you to understand my plight. Otherwise you can't help me. And you want to say, if I understand your plight, I will be a vibrational part of your plight. And then for sure I can't help you. But they don't want you to be over there thriving. They want you to be over there suffering with them, because it's all they know. They're not sucking you in because they don't care about you. They're sucking you in because that's the momentum of what they've got going on. So you have to understand how this works. You have to decide if you want to be part of the wellness, if you want to be part of the abundance, if you want to be part of the solution. The vibration of a question and the vibration of an answer are very different frequencies. The vibration of a problem and the vibration of a solution are very different frequencies. So when you tune yourself by focusing upon things that make it easy for you to align, going as general as you need to go in order to align, and then tune into who you really are, and then hold someone as your object of attention. It is our promise to you that if you can hold someone who you formerly saw as suffering as your object of attention, and you've practiced so well that you see them as thriving. That's what Jesus did. As you stood before him dripping your illness, he saw not your illness. He looked at you and he knew your well-being, and he knew it so powerfully and so clearly that your illness simply could not abide in his vibration. That's why he said, go forth and tell no one. Don't go home and talk about it. You'll talk yourself right back in to the frequency that was disallowing the wellness to begin with, you see. So it feels harsh to you when we say mind your own business. But what we really mean is tend to your own frequency, and then tend to your own frequency, and then. And you'll reach the place where you'll be so consistently filled with this stream of replenishing well-being. No depletion happening, just flowing through you, flowing through you, flowing through you. That when you see someone not allowing it, it won't upset your apple cart. It won't throw you off your game. You will be able to know their wellness even in their demonstration of their not wellness, because you know how it works, you see. It's like not one of you stands in front of your faucet. Beautiful faucets in this hotel. Esther was just enjoying them so much. And not one of you stands before your faucet when it's turned off and says, oh, mine's broken. There should be water flowing out of that all the time, you say. You know that from a moment to the next, it can be not flowing or flowing. And we really want you to understand that for those people who look like they're not flowing, from one moment to the next, they could be flowing. But if you see them as not flowing, then you are a perpetuator of that.